Welcome to the Green Living Chat podcast, dear Green Chatters. My name is David Ewusi-Mensah. On today's episode, we are taking you along to the Ministry of Environment and Energy in Costa Rica with my guest, Rafael Monge Vargas, talking about Costa Rica's approach towards biodiversity conservation. My guest today, Rafael, is an economist with broad experience in different fields related to environmental information. He is working with the Ministry of Environment and Energy of Costa Rica as the director of the National Center of Geoenvironmental Information. They coordinate the National System of Environmental Information and the National Land Use, Land Cover, and Ecosystem Monitoring System. He was part of the team that produced and published the first State of the Environmental Report of Costa Rica in 2018 and many others. And in today's conversation, we did talk about why is Costa Rica known for its sustainability tricks and focus on biodiversity conservation and nature. What can other countries and communities learn from Costa Rica's approach? And whether Costa Rica is there already, are they already facing some challenges in this space? Now we dived into what he does in his office as the director for the National Center for Geoenvironmental Information and all the super amazing projects they have done. There's a lot to unfold in this conversation and I just can't wait to share this conversation with you. But before we do that, this is the last week for you to have the chance to vote for Green Living Chat podcast for our nomination at the Association of African Podcasters and Voice Artists Award. So dive into the show notes with links and how to vote for us, and we will be super excited to share this award with our Green Chatters community. So in Costa Rica, ticos say that pura vida sounds like a warm greeting. So grab a coffee and let's dive into today's conversation. See you on the other side. This is the Green Living Chat podcast. Here, we define sustainability, educate, and discuss feasible solutions to achieve a regenerative ecosystem. In a world where sustainability has become a cliche and misused in practice, we bring you inspiring stories from the industry, research and development, and all stakeholders in between. And together, we can promote the sustainability agenda across the globe. This podcast is proudly produced and sponsored by our team at Economist Solutions in Ghana. We come your way with new episodes this and every Sunday at 6 p.m. GMT. So dear Green Chatters, let's get started. Hello, Rafael. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Green Living Chat podcast. Super excited about this conversation and really looking forward to, the exciting things that we're going to talk about today about Costa Rica and what is happening in here and all that. So you're welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, David. And it's a pleasure to be invited to this podcast.
Yeah, exciting things. Rafael, what brings you fulfillment? I mean, if you look deep in your heart, someone asked me this question a couple of weeks ago and I was just thinking about it. Like we're just about to start a meeting and he asked me, what brings you fulfillment?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question.
Yeah. Something that brings me fulfillment is to give importance to people, to make them feel important. Oh. Not only people, but also like we are speaking about nature and the environment.
Yes.
All living things are important.
Yeah.
But especially people who have feelings and they show it, it's important to. This is one thing that you can give is your attention to help out, just to look in the eyes to people, give a word. I think that if I make somebody feel important, that makes me happy.
That's a very interesting way to put it because, normally when you ask people these kind of questions, what they think about is things very personal, like maybe family or their health or their job. But for you to think about people outside you, that's very significant. I think that's very selfless of you. And can you trace this to anything in the past? Like maybe that's how your parents brought you up, or I don't know, maybe something you picked up along the way. Why do you care about people and making people feel important?
I have thought about this question somehow before, but it's something that you're not going to think about it before I say it, because
Yeah.
I like to play tennis, right?
Oh,
And
there we go.
I have a coach that has these methods and things that are not only based in like your performance physically, but also your mental performance. And there are some books that he recommended to read, and this is something that in that methodology they teach you, like, why are you doing things, right? But not why, like these questions that you just made, and
Yes.
and that analysis that you just did about people often say these kind of things, like having more money or having more friends, but you have to look for something that you can also
Offer to people, right? Wow, I like that.
and also something that you have to work on. Like, if you want to change something or to develop something, you have to work on it and be aware of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right. So, since you asked me that question, I was thinking about what was I thinking when I got this analysis. Why are you doing things? Why do I play tennis or go to work? When I thought about it, I thought that that's something that I like to make people feel important.
Wow. I love that. I haven't heard that in any way before. And I think today, listeners, we are in for a treat because, I mean, we hear stories. I tell a lot of stories here on this podcast. And I think today we're going to know what perspective Costa Ricans are coming from. Costa Ricans are known to be one of the happiest people in the world. So for sure, you saying this, I think it adds up to the point. Definitely, no doubt about it. Now, you're making me very curious about your childhood. How was it growing up? I mean, seeing you, I came to meet you at your office. You have a very nice place in here. How did you get here? How was your childhood growing up? How was education for you? What are some of the experiences that when you just think about, you're like, oh, these are the things that I went through to get where I am right now? How was the transition for you?
Those are very interesting questions. I've been invited to other podcasts or activities, but nobody asked me these personal questions, and it's nice to talk about it. I really thank my parents for my education. I got to go to a private school and high school.
Yeah.
And that helped me a lot to learn English, for example. And English has opened me many doors.
Exactly. Yeah.
That was some. So I really liked what I learned in school and everything, but especially English. Well, I went to the university to study economics. But there, I started
here in Costa Rica.
Yes, I studied economics in Costa Rica, and I started getting involved with politics. that was something that really has marked my future since I got into university, and there I started like being part of the student association. That's how we call it, but for economics, and then I jumped to all the faculty of economic sciences, and then I tried to be president of the student council of the university.
Wow.
Twice. I got closer.
You are not an easy man here.
No, I did enjoy that time very much, and it got me to know a lot of people and to work with people from different backgrounds. I've always been involved with things that needs people motivation to be there, not a payment. But I want to change something, so I get involved, and you motivate them to get into your idea. And since then, that's most of the things that I've been doing. It's also with activism. With that, I got to meet this organization, CO2 Neutral, or CO Neutral 2021. That's was the first name. That it changed it to CO2CR. Now it's not active anymore, but it was an organization where we were starting working with this objective of carbon neutrality that the government of Costa Rica has or had. After that, I got involved with the ministry as an advisor of the ministry in 2014, and then I got to continue scaling, I guess, in this organization, and I'm not very involved with activism anymore because now I'm part of the government.
Yeah.
But I really like to be involved with in the role, in whichever role I am, to try to improve things in our environment.
Wow. I love the story about you. I mean, as you've heard from the introduction of this podcast, you might be curious to know where we are heading with this conversation right now. And normally here on this podcast, the reason why I always try to go all this way before we dive into the conversation is I don't know if it's the same in Costa Rica, but in other countries, working in the environmental related jobs is seen to be low class. It's seen that, I mean, people who were not able to do very well in school end up doing environmental work, especially waste management projects, right? So we talk about this just to encourage the young people who are listening, because a lot of young people listen to my podcast within the ages of 18 and 35, so practically young, right? Just to encourage them that, hey, you can be intentional in studying environment in school. You can be intentional in being an activist. You can be intentional in doing whatever you have. And probably you have gone through some struggles in your life, and before you got here, it wasn't easy. You didn't just jump from school and got here, but you went through the trend before you got here. So that's the reason why we dive into these kind of questions, just to, get the youth also and involved about the things that we talk about here.
You can be intentional and also proud of working in the environment sector.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. I think so. Yeah. So I think that your background is super interesting. Let's dive into the conversation. I'm curious to know more about what you're doing in your office right now. And I mean, since we are in Costa Rica, let's just paint a little bit picture of what Costa Rica is to maybe someone who is listening to us. At the mention of Costa Rica, everyone thinks about green, the forest, and biodiversity, nature, and all that. Why do you think it's so? Why is Costa Rica known for this?
Well, I think that protecting nature and nature conservation is part of our DNA.
Ooh.
Yeah, because we have learned that this is the best way to develop our society in order to get benefits from a clean environment that provides ecosystem services that we need, and that also that can give us a good reputation internationally. And that reputation is also useful to get more resources from like the tourism industry or from projects that support these kind of initiatives. And I think that we learned this not intentionally, like we started doing things because it makes sense for us, and then we name it. Like we name this is the nature-based solution, the payment for ecosystem services program. But when we created that, well, when Costa Rica,
Yeah.
the institution created the ecosystem services program, we weren't thinking about nature-based solutions. This is something new,
Exactly.
Or and we can find different examples of how our policies have been developing with an intention that isn't just environmental, but it makes sense environmental, and now it got us where we are. The best example is electricity, like or the electricity in Costa Rica is mostly renewable because we built infrastructure to take advantage of the supply of water that we have in Costa Rica. And to keep that supply of water, we created also national parks to protect the places where this water is being...
Exactly, so they don't dry up.
Uh-huh. And then that was logical in an energy and development strategy. And then it was also very good for the environment and for our environmental reputation. For me, that's pretty interesting because you can also see that we had like the same trend of deforestation like other countries in Latin America or in Central America. But it changed in between the 80s and the 90s. It changed it, and other countries you see them very deforested in comparison to
Costa
ours.
Rica. Yeah. Wow. I love it. One statement you mentioned in here was that, preserving nature and being conscious about conservation of everything, biodiversity, is part of our nature. I don't think a lot of countries, I mean, even people in this space can even say that. And putting it in that way, actually makes a lot of sense. When I was coming to your office today, I was reading a LinkedIn post that was talking about, we're already feeling the impact of climate change right now. And poor countries, or countries that are actually emitting lesser or contributing lesser to the emissions, are facing droughts and floods. And just recently there was a crazy flooding in South Africa. We have seen, crazy things all over the world. And it's really sad that, there are new investment in coal and, all those things. But then you saying that it's part of our DNA makes it feel like, you guys are thinking about it in a different perspective. We have to. It's our responsibility. That is super interesting. But with all the things that you're saying about Costa Rica investing everything, doing everything that it can, are you there yet? Do you think you have it all going smoothly? Is it like super perfect that everyone is working together, from, the leaders to the kids to all, stakeholders? Is everyone working together, or you have some challenges?
We definitely have some challenges. And of course, I say that isn't in our DNA as Costa Ricans, but not every Costa Rican is the same.
Yeah.
But I could say that most of Costa Ricans feel the same way. Of course, there's people that have different ideas about how we can use our natural resources, or if we should or we shouldn't explore for natural gas, or that's a lot of conversations that are going on. But about our challenges, like we have been doing very good, I think, in my opinion, in the forest sector, good performance on that. But there are other areas that are very badly taken care of, like sanitation. How we manage or wastewater in Costa Rica is very bad, and we need to invest in infrastructure for that. And I think that's the challenge, the infrastructure, because it requires investment, and some kind of investment that is not the one that you used to put in the newspapers. Sometimes it's an investment that you should be having because you should be not polluting the environment. Then you have these all of other necessities in the society that you need to take care, and sometimes you did leave that particular issue behind, and we have been leaving that behind for a while. And a lot of the mainly old infrastructure is not connected to proper facilities, and that you can see that in the pollution for rivers, and how this pollution gets to our ocean too. And it's very sad, because you are in a country that is proud of how we preserve our environment, but then you walk uh, anywhere, because there are a lot of rivers in Costa Rica, but most of them are polluted, and especially in the city, of course. That is not something that you feel very proud of.
Definitely. I think it's something that I've actually noticed myself, because I'm a water engineer. So when I came, I connected with some people, and we wanted to do some projects in this area. And I have observed from some of the analysis and statistics that we are putting out, that we realize that is also a very big challenge. But let's come to your office right now and your operations around the country and everything. What are some of the challenges that you are having? Maybe you can start from what your office really does. What are some of the things you are handling, and what are the challenges that you are facing in that particular area?
Well, as I mentioned, I work in the Ministry of Environment, but I work in an office that is called the National Center of Geoenvironmental Information. This is a technical unit that depends on the Minister of Environment, and it's like an intelligence unit that provides or promotes the correct management of environmental information in the country to make decisions on sustainable development. That is something very broad, because the environment sector is very broad.
So big.
And that can be seen in the amount of institutions that are involved with the ministry, within the ministry, and within the sector, because there are different institutions that are related to the environment that are not necessarily from the environment sector. And you can, of course, everything is related to the environment.
For sure.
We can't get out of the environment. We're part of it. What we're trying to do is that the data and the information that is being generated from the different stakeholders or institutions or organizations is clearly is using the standards and protocols that lets you share this information and use it by other people. Here we have two divided work in what is related to statistical or indicators, this kind of data, and geospatial data. There are or two areas of work, and we are not like generators of information. What we do is coordinate with the different offices and specialists that are generating this information, doing this analysis because they have this mandate, or they are universities that are working on these issues, and we help them, as I mentioned, do things standardized or get access to the data that they require, or help them publish the data that they produce in our platforms or in the official platforms of the government. And of course, if there are requirements of information from, especially of our boss, the minister, we do our reports based on the
Definitely.
requirements that are.
So, what are some of the challenges in Costa Rica that you're working towards? So, of course, with all the data analysis and all the geomapping and all that, what are the significant challenges that you're working towards in on the ground? Because I think earlier we talked about something, and you mentioned about deforestation and other things. How does that look like now?
Yeah, we can take a look at this question in two levels. Like when we talk about generating information for particular questions or particular areas of work, and that requires a particular need, technical need, or investment or anything to generate that information, to be aware of what's going on with this specific issue. And in the other level, we can talk about how we manage that information, how we articulate between the different actors and have platforms where with this data or any kind of data can be visualized, can be interpreted by other people. And so we could see challenges in that part of how we manage an infrastructure that can help information flow, or look at challenges where, in the forest sector, what are we doing right now, and how we can we improve what we are doing with the new data tools that we have, because this is something important, and we discussed this before. Every day there's new data sources for new
Exactly.
satellites or new sensors, and also there's new tools or software that you can use, and also the computing capacity of computers and softwares and systems and clouds.
Just
Everything is
skyrocketing.
Yeah, so one challenge is to be on top of that.
Yeah.
So how
Up to date.
up to date. That's not easy challenge nowadays, and whoever manages information has a lot of power.
Exactly.
And power to help to make people, to facilitate the work that a lot of people are doing too. And that particular challenge is something that we try to very strongly to work with our colleagues from the institutions that are here locally, and also with different partners from international partners like Geo, like Stanford University, UNDP, that are also trying to help
Yeah.
Costa Rica to develop, to answer questions and help us make better decisions in our sustainable development.
Interesting. But how about the second part? You talked about the first part where assessing the data, being updated and other things. But what about the second part of managing the issues that are on the ground?
Well, that's hard to articulate because this is a very, as I mentioned, a broad.
Very broad area. Yeah.
So you need to coordinate with many actors. In Costa Rica, there's a lot of work in water, in forests, in mining, in the ocean. So it's in a big scope with different people working, and sometimes you can see this is not articulated.
Yes.
Right. And for an office like ours, we're only 3 people here trying to work with all this environment is a challenge, but it's something that we have seen that also people need. They need a structure that can help them act in accordance to this, what is required of them. And if you sometimes don't have that guidance, It's hard because you are doing things but what you think is good, but sometimes you need something that can provide this, and not always the users are very articulate to
Exactly. Uh-huh.
provide these answers. That requires also a technological infrastructure, yeah, like a mechanism, and governance too, something where you can be supported from a decree that gives you the right to do these kind of things. And you need that, but also you need the networking, like how to work with your relationship people. You could have a mandate, but if people don't like you or respect you, or they won't facilitate.
Yeah, yeah. I really follow what you're saying exactly. It's a very complicated system to be in, but I think that that is why you are here and you are doing your bit to solve all these issues that are happening around. Let's try to connect the pieces, right? Biodiversity, livelihoods of people, monitoring all these systems that are going on, trying to, allocate some places as maybe reserves and monitoring, how extinction is going on. I don't know what kind of parameters you guys go into, but then I want to ask to talk about the importance of your work to the livelihoods of people and to the development of the country. Why should anyone in any country be thinking this is important?
I use this phrase that information is power,
Yeah.
right? And if you don't have information, you're powerless, right? Nobody should be mad if you have more information or better quality of information, and you can always get that. Like, you can always improve. It's not something that you just do and that's it. Everything can be improved, and that is happening with our environment. Now we can understand better how the different systems, like natural systems, work, understand how we can measure that using new technology, new sensors, and how we can use that measurements to make decisions. One particular thing that I would like to highlight is our work with the monitoring land use and land cover for improving spatial planning. That's something very important for us as a society to decide how we organize the use of our territory and how we can monitor what is going on because you can have a lot of laws and decrees, but is the territory is very big, even though Costa Rica is not as a big country as others, but it's impossible to be aware of everything that is going on in the territory at once, right? And that's why you need to build these monitoring systems that can give you alerts or of situations that the artificial intelligence can detect that can make you go and act in this case in land use change, or you detect deforestation, so things like that. You need to have some mechanism to use that technology, use that data that is out there that anybody can use, but not many people know how to make use of that, and give it to the people that need to make a decision out of it, to go and do an inspection, or to provide an incentive that not only to take back things, you can also show that you're doing good things, and not based only on what you say, but based on evidence that can be provided as science process.
Hi there, just a quick one. If you find our conversations worth listening, why don't you share them with your friends and connections? Please help us reach more and new listeners by leaving a review, commenting, or rating us on any platform where you get your podcast. We can't wait to hear your thoughts and ideas, so share them with us via a social media platform or email. Find more details in the show notes. Now let's get back into today's conversation. Wow, I speak to a lot of scientists. I love the way you break it down very, very low for every person who might not be in the industry to sort of understand what you're saying. The first thing you mentioned is information. So everything that is you're doing is connected to data. If we have the data, we can manage how the land is being used. We can be able to monitor how people are, doing certain things that are not supposed to be done. They are not touching the reserves. They are not doing that. We can even know the species that we have in here. I love it how even when you go to these kind of tourist sites and everything, even kids know like detailed of the species that we have here, the number of species that are being preserved, and there are quite a number of, places in here that are reserved. One of the things that I observed here, I love how the cities are planned. In the sense that they have, these places are residential areas. They do not mix them with, other things. Maybe if you go to some places like Barra Blanca and you look down in San Jose, you can see that they have allocated these areas to be occupied by human beings, right? Buildings. But then there are lots of other places that, are not being occupied. Is that intentional? Does that go into what you guys do at your office? Like, allocating places to be for commercial or living industrial areas or, reserving other places? Is that part of what you use the data for?
That is a news that the data is what it's for.
Yeah.
And we do have policies related to territorial planning. I wouldn't say that we are the best example of an organized or planned
Exactly.
city.
But you're doing great.
It's interesting, but everything is relative.
Yeah.
Relative
Yeah.
to how you see it. Yeah, that's something that we do aim for with our work here. And that particular area is important for me because that's something more tangible, more real for everyday people. When sometimes we talk about forest and the carbon in the forest, it's something that people you don't get
What
a
are you
pack of
talking about?
carbon. Yeah, you only see the forest and you don't see the flows. But when you talk about urban planning and why you should do this here and not here, that is something that affects people's lives directly and also permanently. Because if you change something, it's hard to bring it
Bring it
back.
back.
And I think that for many things, Costa Rica has a lot of laws or norms, but the implementation and enforcement of those laws,
Just a little bit.
there's a gap in that. And even information can tell us how things should be and how things are and what's the gap. And sometimes it's good because you only get to have ideas, like perceptions, like what they said, how they see it, but not something that is not biased or something that is scientifically generated. Is something that you need in order to know what is in reality what's going
That's
on.
right. Yeah. I really, really follow. My co-host on this podcast is a climate scientist, and he will be very, very, very enthused about what you do. Because he can relate more with the data and its impact and he always says that there is always a big gap between the data and what is showing and then what is the reality. So bridging the gap is something that, of course, and I think I would like us to talk briefly about it, how to bridge that gap, because of course education plays a very important part of it. Policies do play a very important part of it, and of course there are other things that might be going on, but maybe later, whilst we're diving to the end of this conversation, I would like to know what Costa Rica is doing probably to close that gap. But then you took up this office in 2017, right? Congratulations on that. And how has the transition been? What are some of the projects you guys have been doing? I recently got to know some of your projects that you're doing, even with Google Earth, and some collaborations that you've been having with some universities in the US and other companies outside Costa Rica. So can you take us through some of the projects that you've done and that is quite significant for maybe other people to also learn and to show what your office is doing to contribute to conservation?
Well, our work is mostly based on, as I mentioned, data and data management. And some of the things that you could see from that work are, for instance, the SDG reports that as a country we produce to monitor how we are uh, performing with our SDGs indicators. And there are 17 indicators. Not all of them are directly related to environment, but we do work to provide the information of the indicators that are related to the environment in coordination with the institutions that are here involved. And that is a report you can see in the website of the National Institutes of Statistics.
Okay.
Pretty revealing, in my opinion, because sometimes it's nice to get to see a database that is based on an international set of indicators that you can compare with other countries that are doing these same measurements. That is interesting about the SDGs, and that's why I thought about it first. But and in other areas of work that you were asking for examples, there are many examples that I could highlight, but I would like to speak today specifically in two projects that we are working in the framework of this IMOCUTE, of the monitoring
Let's go for
land
it.
use land cover monitoring system,
Mm-hmm.
which we were awarded by the group on Earth Observations. They have the GeoSDG award. Actually, I was today in a webinar where we were showcasing what our experience
Nice.
with that project, because there's a new call. The call for the nomination of 2020 is starting right now. So
2020?
2022.
Yeah.
Sorry. We won this award in 2020 as a Ministry of Environment on a project called Mapping Nature for People and the Planet. Yeah, and this is a project with UNDP and University of British Columbia, other organizations
Nice.
that where we're trying to use spatial information to develop this tool that analyzes this information and the evaluation, the weight that experts provide to this data, and also the policies and the objectives in the policies that the country has to produce a tool that analyzes this information using systematic conservation planning to determine one map where you can identify the territory where to protect, manage, or restore the land using nature-based solutions.
That's very extensive.
It's
Yeah.
quite interesting, and we have been polishing that because it requires a lot of understanding the technical and the science behind it in order to make sense. And there's also challenges like what kind of data you use, like global data that may be good for you because it can be used for a lot of parts of the world, but maybe it's not that precise as other kind of local data that can be more, that have a scale that is a higher scale of resolution, but is only available for certain part of the world. And those are the challenges you face with this. But it was a very, very interesting project. You can see the first maps are published in a public platform, and we even use this other project that I'm going to speak about with Stanford University, that is for modeling ecosystem services and using these new data sources from satellite, from remote sensors, and others new capabilities to improve the models of ecosystem services and generate new information of ecosystem variables and models. And even these products were used in a new iteration of this other map of mapping nature for people and planet. What uses is information that is key in different categories. So when we got the new data from the modeling, ecosystem services modeling, we got the chance to use inputs from that to create this other map. So it was very interesting because we won in 2020 with that project, and in 2021, with this other project, and there were partnerships with international organizations. We're proud of those things.
I would actually love to dive a little bit deeper into this particular. So, what level is it right now? Did you guys were able to finish, and have you been able to implement some of its outcome?
I think that with these two experiences, they're so very positive and fulfilling that we don't want them to end. However,
I can imagine.
The project with Stanford for Modeling Ecosystem Services is in a late stage. We are producing reports on the main ecosystem services that were defined. Even the first report on nature and tourism has been published. That was published in a scientific journal, and also here, La Nación got it into a front page in March, and we spoke in the radio with Cho here about it. This is important because tourism is important for us, right? And we use data from remote sensing sources, but also from social networks and using Flickr and eBird databases to know where the tourism or the people that are going to doing some bird watching, that was the focus, where are they going, and that was interesting to also use this kind of alternative sources of information. They're not very common, and to find out that the main drivers of tourism in Costa Rica is, of course, nature, but also infrastructure. Like, it's important if we want to have a successful tourism or sustainable tourism strategy, we need to think about these two things in order to make the most out of it. And we also want to find out new funding opportunities or research options so we can continue with this relationship with Stanford University that has been, in this case, very positive. And also with our colleagues from UNDP, we have done 3 iterations of this map. Costa Rica was the first country that started doing this methodology of mapping nature for people and planet. And now it has grown to other countries.
In Latin America or?
In Latin America and in Africa.
Oh, nice.
Uganda, Peru, and Kazakhstan also was involved in this. Mm-hmm. And Colombia are the first 4 partner countries because it is scaling up. And it's nice to see that it started in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
And it was very hard in the beginning to understand what we were trying to do. And when we got the first workshops, it was before the pandemic. After that, we got the chance to meet each other, and that was good.
Nice.
Because after that, we could only do virtual things.
Yeah.
But virtually, we did the other iterations of this map. The second iteration that is available in the official platform of the government. And last year, we worked in an iteration based on adaptation to climate change. We use this methodology, but to answer questions specifically on adaptation, and use this as an input to the National Adaptation Plan. And that was very good too. Like, we did that exercise not only as a scientific exercise that looks very good in the screen, but also to use it as an input for a report that is going to the IPCC, and that we are also committed to continue following up in that. Analysis.
Wow, there are so many things to unfold in this conversation. I think as we sort of get ready to wrap up, we have talked about a lot of things. I mean, the challenges in the work, why Costa Rica is sort of highlighting biodiversity conservation, and you talking about it being in the DNA and it being part of the people's lives, and some of the challenges that you have. You mentioned that we talked about your office and what you're doing, some of the challenges that you're having, your operations in terms of, getting the data, analyzing it, and also, of course, managing the issues right on the ground, which is sort of a very complicated thing. There is this new trend that is going on. I think you mentioned this a little bit at the beginning of the conversation, that sometimes we even try to put things in practice and later we give it a name. And an example is nature-based solutions. I want you to sort of, since this is something that you work in that field, could you tell us a little bit how nature-based solutions are being enhanced or sort of promoted or applied in Costa Rica?
Well, I think that we have been implementing nature-based solutions without even knowing that they were nature-based solutions.
Yeah.
And the first example that I provided are how we generate electricity in Costa Rica. But of course, we can see things way back from agriculture, and that's the nature-based solution. We need to eat, and we found this in nature, but we have to do this
sustainably.
Sometimes it's hard to categorize, but in the end, what is important is what people are receiving from it and how they are being affected or impacted. Well, Costa Rica has been betting on nature. Right? This has been the way that we have managed to organize our society in order to not be so extractive as a society, and try to maintain or respect the nature that we have around us, and to be able to invite people to come to our country, take a look at it, feel what we feel every day from living here, but also that they bring some resources that can help us also dynamize our economy. And because that's something important, when you have basic needs unfulfilled, then you're not thinking about the environment, you're thinking about these needs first. about what your family needs. And that's something that we're not like a rich country, but not like in the middle. This is a middle income country that is, like it is categorized for World Bank, and I feel like that's good because it's not very good to not have any resources at all. But sometimes many resources also translated into many problems or many interests that need to be managed. And living in a small country with all these kind of benefits from nature, it's something that, I don't know, I think we should appreciate more
Exactly.
as Costa
Yeah,
Ricans.
yeah, for sure. I think so too. And it's very obvious seeing the number of people who come in here and even the statistics of, the foreigners who come in here just to see the nature, relax. When I was coming here to Costa Rica, I transited in France. And from where I was to France, the flight was full of different people. I mean, people from that country. But when we're coming from France, I was expecting to see more Costa Ricans in the flight, and it was full of Europeans. I'm like, wow. And they are all coming here, just to breathe, just to relax. And I think it's something super important that leads me to sort of my last question in this conversation, that you've mentioned so many things, but what do you think, what would you highlight that other countries could learn from Costa Rica? I mean, of course, we are not there yet, but I think there are certain things that you could highlight right from your office. Like, what are some of the things that you could highlight that, okay, guys, I think this is super important and we should pick it up from here?
I think it's super important, the idea of sharing data, making data accessible, not making, not sometimes people have the idea when they produce data, oh, this is mine, and it costs me a lot to do it, and I won't share it because the data, when it's generated, the best thing you have to do is share it, because that's how you give it value, you know. And well, that's something that is good not only for other countries, but within Costa Rica. I think it's a culture that we also need to develop, because sometimes also with open data people get very jealous. What are you sharing? What kind of data do you have? What does it say about me?
I get it.
Yeah, that's cultural, you think. And now with all social networks and computers and internet, and I don't know, I think it's easier to be more open in the way that you manage your data, and that could also mean that it can dynamize research and development and learning uh, more with in your country than if you just keep it hidden.
Love that. Super exciting conversation. I really enjoyed our conversation today. We touched so many things. I know that there are still lots of things to dive into. I'm definitely gonna call on you maybe later after hearing, people's enthusiasm about this conversation and the questions they might ask and other things. But before I let you go, I want to ask you that what does sustainability mean to you? And what are you doing towards it? People have so many definitions of sustainability, and I really want to know how you could personalize that for yourself.
In my opinion, particular, sustainability means to me being able to do something in time, persevere, or in a way that it doesn't have to be affected from other factors. That means life, of course, like sustain life, how we keep breathing clean air, how we keep other species to keep them breathing too. And sometimes it's not fair in this case for a species to be lost because of humans, because it's not their fault. But then you see a lot of humans that are
That's right.
suffering
That's right.
from things that are not their fault too. And that's something that I personally, it personally gets me on sustainability and some of the unfairness that is involved.
You say so many things, right? And last final question is, we have talked about so many things. You talked about some of the challenges that you're facing here in Costa Rica. But think about this. If you have a superpower and you can be able to change just one thing at one time, right? about the issues that you're facing in Costa Rica, or even in your office and your operations, what one thing will you change?
Wow, that's a great question. I will take my time because I only have one superpower. Sometimes I study economics, as I mentioned, and there are a lot of things in economics that work very good in a chalkboard, in a board,
Yeah,
right?
on Excel.
Yeah, but but real life doesn't work with perfect information or without exchanges cost, right? And I think that issue right there about information or lack of information is something that is um preventing us from doing good decisions. And one superpower, what I was thinking about, and I don't know how good is that to provide people on the real value or impact about what they are doing, like
Wow.
that understanding. And that's very hard because sometimes you can go very, very, very deep or in a scale that is sometimes even not real or very hard to represent. But other impacts are very straightforward and you are not aware of. And since you're not aware, then you act based on innocence or ignorance. And if I could, I don't know if this is good because sometimes I don't enjoy when I go to a party and there are balloons and I say, why do you have balloons? We don't need them. But then I don't feel like that's something that doesn't bring me peace, even though it brings joy to other people. And I don't know. People say sometimes ignorance is a blessing, but I don't think so. I think that it, awareness is important and to make better decisions.
Wow. 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 There are so many things to unfold from what you just said. And I've been thinking about this a lot. And I mean, we are done with this conversation, but I really want to put this out there because you brought it up. Wow. I don't know where to start from, but it's super important what you said. And I do advocacy as well to educate people. And whenever I'm called to speak on any panel or join a presentation or anything, one of the things that I mention is I think that we have really wrong standards and wrong priorities. And I have one good guest that I normally have conversation on aside the podcast, right? And she's a professor in Northeastern University in Boston, Dr. Madhavi Venkatesan. And she's also an economist, and she also has a background in sustainability. And she talks about economics and sustainability and the way she measures the two, and talks about we having wrong, economic priorities, that we are trying to use that to overshadow sustainability. So in the sense that we know that GDP, right? And so countries are classified, low income, middle income, blah, blah, blah. So if you are a country and you are preserving the environment, or you're probably looking not using all the coal and all those crazy things, you are not even recognized as a rich country or someone who is putting in a lot of efforts into the environment to preserve the environment. But then those who are rich in terms of money and GDP are rather the ones that are growing up there. And that has actually affected everything. Look at production. Like you were talking about, having balloons on even on a ferry. I mean, there are certain things that we do. We do not think about the sustainability impact, but we rather think about the economic benefit of it. So she mentioned something that is super important that can align to what you're saying, that we deploy things looking at the economic benefits, and then later we see the impact on the environment before we revise, right? Look at plastics, right? Look at waste management. Look at sanitation. Look at the fashion industry. Look at the textile industry. Look at agriculture. All the issues that we brought into the community and into existence, they all have impact. But how can we never thought that drilling crude oil and getting into coal and all that will bring us all these things? If we were able to predict it, I think, and we thought about it well, we wouldn't have done it. But now look at the impact. And even if we stop now, we will not see the impact in the next 10 years or even 20 years. So it sees how crazy it is. And I really love what you said, that like we have like sort of wrong priorities, and economics on the sheets doesn't look like, the reality. We wish that it was like that. And really, thank you for saying that. I'll really think about this a lot, because I think it's very, very important. Yeah, so on that note, thank you so much for coming on this podcast, and I really, really appreciate the conversation that I had with you, and you also accepting to be on the podcast. For sure, it's a blessing, and it's a privilege for me, for sure. And so for sure, I know that all the things that we've discussed, I'm sure we've discussed so many things. The links are going to be in the show notes. And so if anyone wants to dive into it, I'm going to put his social media platforms and his information, how to reach him. If you want to collaborate with him, you can for sure do that as well. So his website, everything is going to be in the show notes. Just dive into it and collaborate with him. I'm sure. Let's let this conversation go on, because I think we've talked about so many things that are super, super important to listen and to also grab some insights about it. For sure, Costa Rica is open. So dive here. When you come, please come to San Jose and look for Rafael and sort of grab a coffee with him during the coffee hour and have some exciting time. Do you have anything to say before we wrap up?
Thank you, David. I really want to thank you for coming to my office and doing this podcast. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you.
And I hope that the people that have listened to it
for sure
did a lot.
Definitely
Did too. And yeah, reach out anytime if you want to write me in social media.
Yeah, we'll do this again.
Come to my office. You, David, of course, invited, and all the people, all the listeners to your podcast.
For sure. Thank you so much. And so we are gonna see you soon. Ciao.
Ciao.
Hey there. Thank you so much for sticking to the end of this episode. Now there is a call to action. So why don't you engage with our community of green charters on our social media platforms? Find more details and links in the show notes. Get involved with the podcast by emailing us at glcpodcast@economistsolutions.com or DM via our social media platforms. We cannot do the same things expecting different results. The urgency of climate change demands actions now and not in 2050. So, dear Green Chatters, see you on the next episode, and remember, live green.